Red Dead Redemption and its sequel are seen as the pinnacle of Wild West gaming. Both games have an expansive open world, plenty of stuff to do, and a deep immersive storyline that captures the grit and beauty of the late 19th century American frontier. With their detailed environments, memorable characters, and innovative gameplay mechanics, they set a high bar for narrative-driven open world games. With that said, one game that can be seen as a direct inspiration for these two games is Gun from 2005. Developed by the now defunct Neversoft and published by Activision, this Western open world game received several game awards as well as sold over 1 million units about a year after its initial release. Despite a very solid outing for a new IP, it somehow never received a sequel, nor was it ever rumored to have one in development. With that said, is this cult classic still worth playing 20 years later? When you start the game, you can pick your difficulty from one of 4 options. As I normally review these games, we will play on the normal difficulty. The game starts off with a cutscene on a mission of some sort in the 1500s. As out of place as this seems at first, this actually does play a part in the overall narrative of the game. So as for the story, it is a pretty solid one. If you've watched a variety of spaghetti westerns of the past, you'll see many of the same story beats being hit here. You got your western tropes of treasure, revenge, Apaches, and even the use of a Gatling gun or two. The story definitely pays homage to many of these movies and is fun to experience. Even on repeat playthroughs, I often watch the cutscenes thanks to the very solid character work. The story isn't deep like Baldur's Gate 3 or anything like that, but it is still fun nonetheless. You don't always need a complex storyline to tell an engaging story. I think the main reason the story is as good as it is comes from the excellent cast here. Lance Hendrickson, Chris Christopherson, and even Ron Perlman himself lend their voice to the characters. Just add Clint Eastwood and Horace Whitaker and you would have yourself a legit Western ensemble cast. When hiring Hollywood talent, it is always a risk whether or not they will take the job seriously or phone it in. Thankfully, that is not the case at all, as everyone here gives a very strong performance. That goes hand in hand with the writing, which allows for some very memorable moments. And while I can talk about the specific characters or story beats, I will do my best to keep spoilers to a minimum. For now, let's get back to our character Colton, played by Thomas Jane. Colton is out on a hunt with his father Ned. The hunt serves as a tutorial as you will learn how to shoot with your pistol and your rifle. You even get introduced to the quick draw mechanic, which can be seen as a pseudo Deadeye mechanic from Red Dead Redemption. Basically, the game slows down as you can swipe between targets and fire endlessly with your pistol until you run out of your quick draw meter. You fill up the meter by killing enemies with styles such as shooting the weapon off your enemy, explosive kills, or racking up headshots. It's a fun mechanic that definitely comes in handy when facing multiple enemies at once. The gunplay here is surprisingly solid. It's far more of an arcade shooter compared to more simulation-based ones. You point and shoot at your enemies from a third-person perspective. While you do need to reload and watch your ammo supply, you won't have to worry about standing to shoot as there is no accuracy loss when moving. You can even switch to first-person shooting with the click of a button. The sound effects as well as the visceral reaction of your enemies makes the gunplay very enjoyable. This is especially true when using a shotgun. At first, you'll start with a standard rifle and revolver. Thankfully, you'll get stronger and more powerful weapons with each main mission you complete. You can even get a bow that shoots dynamite arrows, which is unrealistic as hell, but enjoyable regardless. Despite the decent variety of weapons to use, I found rifles to be what I felt the most comfortable with. This provided great range and still had stopping power to one-shot most enemies in the head. Molotovs and dynamite can also be found to help deal with large crowds of enemies. Most of the enemies you'll be fighting in this game are regular goons, although there are boss battles that you'll be involved in. I found most of these to be pretty easy. Using quick draw and always sticking with the best weapons possible, bosses are not too difficult to take down. You should, however, keep your distance or you will lose health rapidly if you're too close. Also, never try to melee a boss unless you want to die quickly. So most of the game will be spent with you participating in main missions by talking to an NPC within the game world. Since this is an open world, there are several side activities that you can participate in. You can complete bounties, help the local marshal, assist in the Pony Express, go hunting, herd cattle, and even play poker of all things. All these quests are handcrafted, although many of them can be completed in just a few minutes. Still, I would recommend them not only for their entertainment value, but also since this is the only way to increase your stats and gain some extra money. It's a bit of an arbitrary thing to have to complete side quests to boost your attributes, but it is a sign of the times and it's honestly forgivable. While I am overall positive on Gun thanks to its gunplay and overall great vibes around, there are a few caveats to me to take note of. For one, the open world in Gun is incredibly small. The game contains 2 main towns with a few locations in between. Even so, these towns are very sparse with only a handful of notable buildings and locations in each. You can certainly buy stuff, but there's only a handful of upgrades to purchase. As mentioned prior, new weapons can only be found by completing the main campaign. It only takes about 2 minutes on horseback to get from one town to the next. To be fair, this may be refreshing to some, as some open world games can just go on for far too long. The other is just how criminally short this game is. For an open world title, you would expect at least a 20 to 30 hour experience just focusing on the main story. According to howlongtobeat.com, Gun will take you about 6.5 hours if you just focus on the main missions. If you are looking at 100% completion, that'll net you only 13 hours. Even other contemporary games of the time like Grand Theft Auto 3 is 14.5 hours long if you focus on the main story only. I watched every cutscene and did most of the side quests. Even this, I still only netted about 5.5 hours on this playthrough. It's a shame since I do enjoy my time with every revisit, but there just isn't much to keep me playing since there just isn't enough to do after a while. Still, there is just something incredibly charming about exploring this quaint little western world. It always feels like the early days of the frontier when towns were still expanding and the Wild West was still in its heyday. Playing a game like this just makes me yearn for a survival focused western where I can play as a bounty hunter, ride on stagecoaches, set up my own town, and even run a bandit camp. The possibilities are endless, and it's a shame that we don't have more modern western titles to choose from. Wild West Dynasty could have been the game to fulfill those needs, but we all know how that turned out. Anyways, I'm beginning to get distracted, so we might as well get to wrapping this one up soon. I played this on my main machine and my XP machine, but recorded on my main one. While the game does work on Windows 11, I would recommend saving often after every mission, just in case. I had a crash that sent me back several hours since I didn't save the game at all. While crashes are rare for Gun, you never know when it comes to older games and compatibility with Windows 11. Overall, Gun kicked ass then, and it still kicks ass now 20 years later. The gunplay is fun, the story is solid, and the side activities are fun to participate in. The only thing holding this game back is the surprisingly short length and the small open world compared to modern titles. It really is the kind of game that deserves a sequel or even a full-blown remake. At the very least, I would like to see a remaster of this game to polish up the graphics and even implement some 4K resolution support. Either way, definitely check this one out on Steam or GOG. Gun is usually sold for about $20 full price, with occasional sales bringing this down to $5. At both full and sale price, this experience is much worth it in my opinion. Thank you all for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.